Hello, hello. My name is Finesse Copeland, and here I have with me Betty. And we're not going to be using her real name, so we're just going to work with Betty right now. So, Betty is going to be sharing with us her immigrant experiences in the US. Welcome, Betty, and thank you so much for talking with me today. Now, can you tell me a little about your journey in the US? Like, why did you come and what were your goals?
For me, like many of us, I came to the US to seek better opportunity for myself and for my son at the time. You know, I had goals of going back to school. Back then you used to see people succeeding in America, so you were like, whoa, you want to get that opportunity to just only if you get the chance. However, the fact that I was undocumented, it was so, so, so hard. I mean, to get a job for one, it was hard. You had to have a social security, and like many people, you came here, you overstay your visa. That's not possible. Uh, I started working, juggling back and forth work, taking care of my son. It was mentally and physically demanding. But then, I met somebody, and I felt that this person and I could start, life. We could build together. And we started dating. We moved from one point to the other fast, of course. Then he proposed to me, and we got married a couple months after.
Mhm.
Um, but then for some reason I felt, I don't know, going in the marriage, you know, that I'm undocumented. I don't know, because you hear a lot of stories how some women get treated, because a lot of the men they use that has a weapon over your head. But then, we started off pretty good, and I wasn't really thinking about that anymore. But
That's
lo
good.
and behold, you know the same situation, it came around, where I was put in the position where I started to feel as if though my marriage wasn't based on love, but um was a tool to use. I was saying that I found out that my the marriage now become like he used it as a way to control me. Like about probably a couple months into our relationship, after we got married, then I'm thinking about, we're thinking about looking about my paperwork so I can stay here legally, work, pay taxes, and I mean contribute to the country, of course. But things started to just like take a turn, you know, and it was going in the wrong direction. We had a discussion at one point. We had a conversation where he said he felt that when I get my paperwork,
Mhm.
to live and work here, I was gonna leave him. And I don't know where that came from. I don't know if he was being influenced by other persons,
Mhm.
but that's where he started to really act different with me. He started to withhold things from me. When it's time to put in the paperwork, he would like um be hesitant. It was always supposed to be on a whole. He used to ask me like, what was the rush? You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I'm like, if there wasn't a rush, it was just the legal and right thing to do. So I can work, and be, be a better steward to society. Um, he then started to be physically abusive, you know what I mean? And oh, finesse, stop.
What? Okay. Okay. I know talking about this can be very emotional for you, Betty, but when you say that he got physically abusive, could you give me an example of what happened?
Well, he would just sort of have me in a position where I felt I was trapped. You know what I mean? He would start to go through my phone and, just start to be like loud and like boisterous, mean, you know, everything was just going downhill, you
Did
know. Go ahead, did you say something?
did he ever hit you?
I would say probably one or two times. One
Okay.
or two times, yeah. He got physically abusive. But then at that point, I was in a situation where I felt like I really thought that we were in a emotional relationship. We're a partner, but then it just turned out to be like he used the fact that I was undocumented um over my head, to just be like he's gonna control me.
Oh,
I do whatever he says. When he started to search my phone, that's where I felt like this was just not a good situation. You know what I mean? If I work, he would like ask me, I couldn't send money back home nor anything like that. It was just awful. It was just an awful situation.
okay. So when you say that you would use it over your head, um, like, can you give me some example of things that he would do? Like, has he ever like hold on to your passport? Has he ever said that he's not going to send in paperworks? Things like that. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, that's exactly what I'm referring to. First, when we put in the paperwork, when after he eventually decided that we're gonna put in the paperwork, um, when the letters come in the mail, he would withhold them from me. He would withhold those letters from me, like even to go ahead and get my fingerprint done. I didn't know that I was supposed to do the fingerprint until like probably a couple days before. I don't know what compelled him to give me the letter at that time, but he eventually did, and I got my fingerprint done where I could get my work permit and my social security so I could work legally. When my green card even came in the mail, you know, he was just ahead of me with everything because I was vulnerable. I didn't really understand how the system works. So I would ask people that went through the same situation, how does it work? But with him, being that he was my partner at the time, my husband, and then he know that in order for me to stay here legally, you know, the papers and everything that I should be getting, the green cards and everything, he was the one in control of those things. And I just allow him to do it because I felt I was in a situation where I couldn't get out because me being undocumented.
Okay. Was there at any point where you had to do something for him in order for him to do something for you? Like, was there any type of transaction? It could be either monetary, like monetary transaction or otherwise. Was there any situation like that that you were put in?
Yes, of course. I had to pay I had to pay most of the bills, in the household. I to one At one point he was like, if I don't give him this amount of money, he was gonna like show up to the interview, or if we were supposed to see our lawyer, he was like, and he needs this amount of money before he show up to the lawyer. He's not signing no paperwork. It was just a lot of monetary abuse. Sorry, it was just a lot of monetary abuse.
Okay.
Um, I was forced to do things that I didn't want to do, but because I had to do it because of my situation. It was just awful. Like every time we were supposed to do something regarding my paperwork, he demand more money to the point where his family members got involved too. They too used and abused me because I was vulnerable. I was so soft. I was so emotional. I was hopeless. You came into this country with no help. You had no one to turn to. You know what I mean? It was just an awful situation.
So
Um,
you say that their family used and abused you. Could you give a specific example? Like what did they do in this situation?
yes, like after a while, I really, really started to feel like no, my marriage, it wasn't an emotional partnership, love relationship. It now became into a business transaction. You know what I mean? Because to the point where I confided in one of his aunt and I told her, I mean, I don't think our marriage is gonna work anymore and I really wanna like move out. And
Mm-hmm.
she started to like, get closer to me and started to console me. And then she said, you know what, she could help me get a place, and I said, okay, you know, she said she could help me get a place, I don't have to worry about him. And I said, okay. And she said, I have to pay such and such a money for the down payment for the apartment. And I agree, of course. At the time, again, I was so stupid, vulnerable, lost, looking for somebody to confide in. And she said I was supposed to pay her some money for the apartment. And I gave her the money for my part for the down payment. And when it's time to move into the apartment, the landlord said that there no money wasn't received, and she can't have me staying there because there wasn't no transaction between she and the aunt. And it was just an awful situation. But the landlord, I share a little bit of my story with her, and she felt so bad, where she said, okay, I'm gonna have you stay here for such and such a time until you make enough money to pay for the apartment. And that's how I kind of like move out, and I just try to do what I have to do,
It's
you
really
know.
good that someone, showed up and helped you in that situation. But let me ask, how did your immigration status affect your ability to seek help or even leave? What was going through your head? Why didn't you report it? Because you mentioned physical abuse, some level of intimidation. And with this, money being taken, why didn't you go to the relevant authorities to report it?
To be honest, I was threatened. He used to say he's gonna call USCIS. He's gonna tell them that our marriage is fake and that I used him. Well, in return, I felt I was the one that was being used, because of all the abuse and emotional trauma that I went through. You know what I mean? They just like threatened me like from left to right, which is why I didn't report it to anyone, because I also felt that with my situation, I was not going to get the help that I deserve, you know, because the authorities probably wouldn't understand. And I think they would probably believe my husband more because he was the US citizen and I wasn't. So those were the things that crippled my thoughts of saying something, and to the fact that I confided in his aunt. And I just felt like everybody was against me because of my situation, and I just felt really crippled to the point where I couldn't or feel comfortable to share certain things with anyone.
Okay. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share with us. What would you say would have been the turning point for you when you knew you had to leave or to seek help in your situation?
Um, I think that point was when I got my green card finally, I felt like I had some sort of power uh to like leave, completely. Uh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that's when I felt like, you know, even though I was still being threatened, I still feel like I was still married to him, but with everything that went down, I felt like this wasn't, something that I want to continue with, so I'm just gonna, move on by faith and whatever happens, happens.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was when I felt powerful enough to like, take myself away from the situation.
Okay. And how would you say you started to rebuild your life? So you mentioned that you when you got the green card, you felt the power to step out and do more. But how would you say that you rebuilt your life? Did you get a good job? Like, what did that look like? What did that turning point look like for you?
Oh, well, I must say, after I got my green card, I decided I was gonna join the military. Um, I think at the time it was the best choice for me to make.
Mm-hmm.
I feel, you know, being a part of something that is that is bigger than I am, being a part of a team, an organization, being a part of the biggest, armed force in the world, I feel like I achieve something out of my situation. Today I'm still in the military, and I feel really good. I still sit back and think about everything that I went through, but today I must say, in spite of everything, there is a silver lining at the end. If only you just like stick through your situation. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's hard. If you have to say something, speak up. Trust me, you have authorities out there that will, you know, you have people that will defend you. You have the VAWA program, you have authorities and resources out there, for people like for like people who are undocumented. I mean, I was there then, but at the time there wasn't so much knowledge. I was just being, I was just like going with the flow of what everybody was saying around me, just because of my situation. But today I can say that I feel powerful because I overcome everything that I went through.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your service, I must say.
Thank you for your support.
I really appreciate you sharing with us because not many people feel like they have the voice to talk about their situation. They might feel scared about the situation that they're in. Being in that vulnerable situation is not something that I wish on anyone. And I know that people listening would say, then why don't you just go back home? Why not just go home? What would you say to the individuals that may have that question? Why not just go back home if it was so hard, if it was so difficult?
To be honest, a lot of people, you know, gave up what they have back home just to come to America to seek a better life. Um, I didn't think it was a good choice of going back home, because if you go back home, you might not get the opportunity to come back again, So I would just say, like, try to, ride out the situation and try to seek help.
Mhm.
There are communities out there for people like you and I, who have been through stuff like that. There are authorities, there are programs. I think, you know, um, going back home was the best choice for me at the time. I wasn't even thinking about that. Yeah, I felt like it at one point, but it was the last thing on my mind to do. It was the last thing on my mind to do. because I know that, you know, there are better opportunities here.
Yes. So, all right. Thank you so much for sharing with us. And I really hope that this video or interview inspires someone to talk about what they're going through so that they can seek the help, that is out there for them as well. So, thank you so much again, Betty, for sharing with us. Um, thank you.